Hello and welcome to the Intentional Brief, your weekly video update on the one big thing in cybersecurity for middle market companies, their investors, and management teams. I'm your host, Shay Colson, managing partner at Intentional Cybersecurity, and you can find us online at intentionalcyber.com. Today is Monday, September 29th, 2025, and we are right at the end of the quarter and end of the fiscal year for some, including the federal government here in the United States, which should make for an interesting week, particularly since this week's story wouldn't have even been a story if the staff at CISA get laid off due to a government shutdown. But we'll let those mechanics work themselves out over the next couple of days. For now, let's back up a couple of steps before we get too far into things. Last week, CISA issued an emergency directive, number 2503, only their third of the year so far, ordering civilian agencies to, quote, identify and mitigate potential compromise of Cisco devices, unquote. CISA asserted that the activity identified as a part of a campaign driven by a nation-state actor known as Arcane Door, who had previously been profiled by both Cisco and the Canadian Center for Cybersecurity. The emergency order here tasks agencies with, quote, immediately identifying all Cisco ASA platforms and then to conduct both a threat hunt and patching exercise by the end of this week, given that the exploits against these systems are now being seen in the wild. This is where all of those basics that we talk about each and every week on this show start to come into play. And if you're ever facing a similar situation, I want to walk through briefly how they come together to put you in a stronger, more defensible position. So first of all, as the directive notes, it's critical to identify what is in your environment. You might hear this called asset inventory, and not only does it apply to both hardware and software, it's the fundamental and foundational control for both the NIST CSF and the CIS controls, the critical 18 controls. In short, it's asking, do you know what's on your network? Do you know what's in your environment? This is why we keep inventories or build allow lists for software or run vulnerability scans on a regular basis. It's to both verify and benchmark what's on our network and when, and also to identify new machines or maybe old machines that got turned back on to grab a file, which happens all the time, things like that. Once you build your inventory next, are you able to get these types of warnings if you don't have CISA watching your back? You might hear this called threat intelligence, which is really just a fancy term for being aware of the implications of running all those things you just identified in your inventory list. Do you get the warnings from those vendors that you need to take action? Are you subscribed to the updates from the various ISACs and other feeds, including CISAs, to ensure that you're aware of these emerging threats? So then you get the alerts, and now you have to take action. So fortunately, this directive and the team at Cisco, kudos to them, have provided some pretty clear next steps on how to patch these devices, but there's still plenty of work to be done. You need to ask yourself if your team can reach out and update all the machines or software that needs updating in a situation like this. Maybe it's fairly straightforward if you just have one edge device, and Cisco has lots of instructions and tools to help you do it. But if you've got lots of edge devices or hundreds of workstations or installations of a piece of software that needs to be updated, or maybe mission critical IoT devices, how prepared are you to do that sort of patching or that sort of updating? Do you have this capability in a way that's practiced, that's defined, that can be deployed quickly, and that can scale in an organization-wide manner out of band, right? Not just on the production downtime scheduled on Sunday, but on a Tuesday at noon when we need to get this thing patched. If the exploits are active in the wild, then time matters, and being able to move quickly is key. Finally, and this step is often overlooked, but it's called threat hunting. Do you have the logs that you need to determine if this has already been compromised and the attacker is now downstream in your environment? Closing the barn door after the horse is out of the barn does not help you get the horse back in the barn, right? So looking at the point of entry and even closing it off, that might not help you if it's already been exploited as an initial vector of compromise. Instead, can you review the logs? Do you have the visibility into your infrastructure to understand if the attacker has already conducted their initial compromise and is now moving around your ecosystem? This is also where all of those other defensive controls come into play on your network, on your endpoints, where you are now creating room for yourself to both deter and detect and disrupt this attacker's movements. All of these things matter, and they all come together to form this defensible position. These basics are really what make the difference in your ability to defend the realm and support the business. So if you're not feeling confident in your ability to execute on these basics day in and day out, and even possibly under duress and in short order, then you've got some practice to do, right? Get the tools in place, get the policies in place, get the processes in place, and get some reps under your belt. There aren't any shortcuts here. You just have to figure out how to do the work in your environment, and being under the gun with a live warning from CISA or someone else is not the time you want to realize you should have done more prep. From a fundraising perspective, we saw just under $9 billion in newly committed capital, with Ridgemont Equity Partners putting up almost half of that, raising nearly $4 billion for their fifth fund. So congrats to that team. From a macro perspective, some interesting assertions from the commentary class, with the CEO of Brookfield Asset Management asserting this week that there should be, quote, 4,000 less PE firms. Pair that with Apollo Global Management's president Jim Zelter asserting that there's many PE funds that are out there that have raised their most recent fund and don't realize it's their last fund. Both provocative statements, and I think we've got the makings here for a real shift in the landscape, to say the least. Is it hyperbole? Is it prescience? I don't know, but I guess we're all going to have to just wait and see. The only thing we do know for sure is that the changes are coming and the rate of change is accelerating. So that can create both opportunity and challenges. Again, get the reps in, understand your own operating environment, and then you can create opportunities out of these challenges. A reminder, you can find links to all the articles we covered in the comment section below. You can find written transcripts and back issues of these videos at intentionalcyber.com, and you can now sign up for our monthly newsletter, The Intentional Dispatch, at intentionalcyber.com/newsletter. We will see you next week for another edition of The Intentional Brief.